Whoever has will be given more so that they have an abundance. But whoever does not have, even what they have, will be taken from them. You guys ever read something or hear something in the Bible that doesn't sound like it's something that should be in the Bible, and so you got to do a double take? Anybody got to look to make sure you're still reading the Bible? Only to find out that the crazy thing that you just read was actually spoken by the most important person in the entire Bible. Jesus said in the narrative that we're going to look at today that whoever has will be given more so that they have an abundance. And whoever does not have, even what they have, Jesus says, will be taken from them. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. I just want to take this moment to remind you to make sure you fasten your seatbelt and make sure your tray table is in upright position. Because we're about to experience some turbulence due to some strong winds. And while I cannot promise you that this ride will be uncomfortable, I can promise you that if you don't try to bail early, if you don't try to jump out that, exit row door mid-flight, that this journey that we began last week will actually take us to a place of more happiness than you and I have ever dared was possible for us. And you can take that to the bank, not just because I said it, but because that's what Jesus said. Quick context in case you missed last week and you didn't get a chance to catch up on the YouTubes. The ancient writers tell us that Jesus' earliest friends went up to him in private and they wanted some insider information. They're like, hey man, Jesus, can you just tell us when the world is going to end and how we're going to know when everything is going to go down? And rather than tell them when the world was going to end, Jesus told them how he wanted them to live in the gap between now and when the world ends and he comes back. And to do so, Jesus told them specifically two parables. And the second parable is what we started last week. If you missed it, go listen to the line. It's an important context for this conversation. But Jesus tells a parable in which he compares the kingdom and the story of God to a master who entrusted his wealth to three servants. Can we jump in Matthew chapter 25? Do you guys have your Bibles with you? Anybody got the Bibles with them? Words are going to be up on the screen if you didn't. Don't worry about it. And so you might as well be alive. You all made it here due to the time change. And so can I at least get some energy from the crowd? You guys are like, okay, good. All right. Special front row seats for you guys in heaven, just so you know. All the angels are like, they made it there and they have children. That's amazing. Okay, here we go. Matthew chapter 25, 14. This is amazing. Jesus is telling a parable. If you don't know what a parable is basically a short story that Jesus made up to illustrate a spiritual lesson. And so he's trying to teach him about the kingdom of God. And then he says this. He says, again, it, referring to the kingdom of God, will be like a man, Jesus said, who is going on a journey, who called his servants together. And then he says this, he entrusted his wealth to them. Verse 15 says, to one, he gave 5 talents, right? And to another, he gave 2 talents. And to one, he gave 1 talent, each according to his ability. And then he went on his trip. Another translation says that to one, he gave 5 bags of gold, right? Some of your Bibles say that. And then to another, he gave 2 bags of gold, and then to one guy, he gave only 1 bag of gold. I'm not going to re-preach the whole sermon, but I just want to give you the context because I think it's important for today's conversation to remember that even though we think it's unfair that this guy got 5 bags of gold and this guy got 2 and this guy only got 1, what we learned last week was what? What we learned last week was that the master was actually very generous and very gracious to the guy who got 1, because historians tell us that his 1 talent and his 1 bag of gold is actually the equivalent of 20 years worth of a day laborer's wages, which they estimate to be about how much? Anybody remember how much? $600,000. Okay, so it's easy to be like, man, he only got 1. The guy got 600 G's. Okay, let me put it in perspective for you. And this is a true story, okay? And I know that sometimes, preachers come up here and we exaggerate stuff. And I'll be the first to say, maybe sometimes I do that, once in a while. But I promise you the story I'm about to tell you is true. Okay, I was preparing the sermon This week, and those of you who've heard me preach and been here a while know that I love to think of just visuals and illustrations to kind of bring the story alive. And so as I'm reading this parable, I'm like, man, I just want the people to get it. Like, that's a lot of money. I know he only got one bag, but $600K is a lot of money. And so I had a crazy, crazy idea. I promise you, I swear I'm not making this up. And so I texted a couple people on our team. Specifically, I texted Lori. I was like, Lori, you're a pretty resourceful person. This is a crazy ask. I'm not losing my mind, I promise. But I will do anything to help these people understand the gospel and the story of Jesus. Can you help me? And she's like, what do you need me to do? I'm like, is there any way in the world that you could get me $600,000 in cash for my sermon on Sunday? It's a real conversation. And I'll be honest, when I texted that, I kind of was laughing in my office, like, that I expected Lori to be like, hey, yeah, I can probably get you $600,000 of Monopoly money. Can you use that? Like, that's really what I was expecting her to say. But that's not what Lori said. Lori's like, hey, let me make some calls. This is a true story. If you think I'm lying, Lori's right there. She knows she's not going to lie, right? She's a saint. I may lie. She's not going to lie to you. And she's like, let me mix. So I'm sitting in the back office, and I'm sweating now because I was like, I was kind of kidding. This is a little bit of a joke. And she's like, and so I text her back. I'm like, really? Like, you think you can, like, and she's like, yeah, I think I actually have some friends. I have a friend who I think if I call, they can kind of make this happen. And here's what I said to her. It's a true story. I'm like, I need to meet your friends. Like, I need new friends. Like, I legit. And I love my friends. No offense against my friends. I've known some of you guys for a long time. Jared, I've known you for a long time. But man, bro, I will trade your friendship for a friend who can get 600 G's. I mean, money's not everything, but it's a lot. It's something, okay, right? I mean, I don't care if we don't have anything in common. If you can come up with 600 G's in cash, we'll come up with something in common, okay? We'll be good friends fast. And so I literally texted Lori. I'm like, okay, I feel like I need to meet some of your friends because that's crazy. But I'm like, are you serious? She's like, yeah. I'm like, I was kind of kidding. She's like, actually, I already made the call, and this person said they could probably pull it off, and they're calling right now. I'm serious. You think I'm making this up? Am I making this up, Lori? This is a real conversation. And they're like, yeah, he's calling banks right now, and he's like trying to see, like he thinks he can probably put it together. And so I'm in my office taking deep breaths. I'm like, okay, Lori, can you pass? I'm like, Lori is going to make my life. You think I'm making this up? She literally was like, yo, I called. And dude's calling around in the banks, right? And he thinks we can probably make this happen. Okay, and I didn't say this to Lori, but now I'm getting nervous because I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I like the illustration when I didn't think it was going to happen. But I'm like, you're going to give me $600,000 in cash. And I'm thinking about standing up there with a bag full of that much money. And I'm like, I love this community, but I don't know if I trust you guys that much. I'm like, I don't know. Because let's be honest, right? A lot of you are saved, but some of you haven't been saved long enough to not jump me in the lobby. That's a lot of money. Well, long story short, apparently the banks need more than like 2 days to get $600,000 in cash. So that's not what's in here. This is just a blanket. But you get the point. Some of you are already scheming right now. Like, I will jump you on stage right now, Pastor. I don't care that we're streaming. That's a lot of money. Can you imagine if that actually came through and I'm up here with somebody else's money? $600K is a ton. And that's the point, right? The point that we talked about last week is that the moment we start comparing what this guy got with what that person got, we realize that even the guy who got one, including you and I, have been given a lot. Every single person in this room, everybody online watching right now, you have been given a whole lot more than you deserve. And the question that Jesus wants his listeners to ask, and the question that I hope you ask yourself before you leave here this morning is, what are you going to do with what has been entrusted to you? Okay, and this is you, by the way, even if you're not a Christian, some of you in here, you're still checking out the church and faith and whatever. You've been given a lot. And again, the question is, what are we going to do with what we've been entrusted with? And I probably should maybe have led with this, but the key word in that first sentence in verse 15 is the word entrusted. Okay, I don't know if you caught it or not, but it says the master did what? If you can go back one actually to verse 14, it says he called his servants, and what did he do? He, and say it with me, entrusted his wealth. which is Jesus' way of letting us know that when the master handed out those bags of gold, there was an expectation that they were not only going to protect it, but he expected them to steward what he was giving them to the best of their ability. And apparently the first guy got the memo. He understood the assignment, because listen to what happens the moment he got his bag of gold. Listen to what Jesus says. Jesus said this. He says in verse 16 now. He says, the man who has received 5 bags of gold went at once, immediately, as soon as he got his bag, and he put his money to work. Real quick before we can read, anybody good at math here? Any math majors, math teachers, math? Are you good at math? Like real good or like, okay, good, real good. Okay, come on, be confident, own it. All right, she's like, all right, I'm great at math. Okay, I just need you to help me out with this. Okay, and it's not that complicated, I promise. But I just want you to translate this as we read this story into US dollars, because I don't want us to be lost in translation. So 1 talent is 600K. All right, you got it? You're with me. Okay, and the first guy got 5. So how much did he get total? 3 million. Is it 3.5? 3. It's just 3, right? Now I'm confused with my math. It's just 3. 3. Okay. So he started out with 3, and he says he went at once, and he put the money to work. And now it says that he gained 5 more. So now how many does he have? So now he's got 6 million. Are you guys tracking? Yeah, you guys with me? All right, good, because this is important. Right? If you miss this, you're going to miss the cliffhanger coming up. And then verse 17 says that so also the guy with 2 bags. And 2 bags is what? 1.2 million. So he went and he put the 2 bags to work, and he gained 2 more. So now how many does he have total?
2.4.
Is that right? Okay, all right. Just checking with everybody. Make sure you're with me. All right, Jim's like, yep, I got it. All right. So that's what he's got now. So keep that in mind. First 2 guys take it. They work. They invest it. They double it. And then listen to Bucky here in verse 18. He says, but the man who had received 1 bag of gold went off. And he did that thing that contestants do in Survivor when they find an immunity idol. Any Survivor fans in here? You know, when they find the idol and they just go like dig and bury it in a hole, right? That's what this guy did. The writers tell us that he took his bag and he dug a hole in the ground and he hid his master's money. Now, we don't know if he dug the hole with his bare hands or if he stopped by Home Depot on the way home, got a shovel and dug a real deep hole. We don't know that. All we know, though, is that he kept that bag of gold, that talent, buried for a long time. Right? We know that he never went back to that place where he put the talent. And we know that because of what Jesus says next. This is amazing. Listen to what Jesus says in verse 19. Jesus says this. He says, after a long time, the master of those servants, the one that entrusted the bags of gold to them, he says he came back and he settled accounts with them. Again, remember, he was entrusting the gold to them, and so they were accountable. And so he settled it with them. He says, the man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5, which is about $6 million, right? So he brought the $6 million back to his master. And he says, master, you entrusted. Remember when you gave me all that money, you gave me 5 bags of gold, 5 talents? He's like, see, I have gained not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but I have gained how many? 5 more. At which point, you know, Bucky, the guy who had 1, is probably in the corner whispering under his breath, what an overachiever. What a try hard, right? You guys know who this guy with the 5 is, right? He's the guy that everybody wants to be in a group project with them because they do all the work and then some. Anybody know anybody like that, right? Those are my favorite people. Like, I have a friend like that, Jeff Mickelay. Jared knows him. Like, he's that guy that he'll do above and beyond. And I'm like, dude, I wish we went to high school together because we would have been perfect. Seriously, he would do all of the work, and I'll just show up and just talk. I'm good at that. I'm like, just do all the work, and I just show up and talk, right? And that's who this 5th guy is. He's like, man, look what I did. He says, I didn't just gain 1 more. He says, you gave me 5. And then he says this. He says, and I gained 5 more. I promise I'm not just being dramatic, but I feel like I got to sit down for this next verse. Listen to what his master says. It says his master replied. Remember, Jesus is telling a parable about God, what God is like. And he says this. He says his master replied. He says, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. So now, he says, I will put you in charge of many things. Earlier, I talked about how this journey was going to end in a place of happiness. Well, here it is. Listen to what the master says. It says, come and share your master's happiness. OMG. Exclamation, exclamation, exclamation. Shocked face emoji, exclamation. Mind blown emoji, exclamation, exclamation, exclamation. Shut up, exclamation, all caps. You guys know that thing that young white girls like to do when you tell them something crazy and they push it and they're going, get out of town, shut up. You know what I'm talking about? No? Some of you are like, is that not a thing? I think that's a thing. Maybe it's just the young white girls that I know. I apologize if that's not true. Right? You never seen that? Like, shut up. Like, this is amazing. The picture Jesus is painting here is of a God who cares so much about stewardship that when the guy who had 5 gained 5 more and told him, he looked, can you just imagine that you were there. I know it's a made up story, but just imagine that it were real. And the master's looking at him and he's like, attaboy. He's like, I am so proud of you. Are you kidding me? I gave you 5 and now you have 5 more. Well, you're not going to believe what's going to happen next. I know you thought that I was super generous earlier when I gave you 5 talents and 5 bags of gold. Well, watch out. Guess what's going to happen? I'm going to give you more than you could ever imagine. Just because you've been faithful with a few things, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to put you in charge of many things. Listen to how he ends this. He says, I want you to come now and I want you to share in your master's happiness. I'm going to read that second part in the middle again. It says, you have been faithful with a few things. And now he says, I am going to put you in charge of many things. Is it just me or does this fire anybody else up? Right? Thank you, Sarah. One person. I still got about an hour to get everybody else. I got time. Right? Is anybody else fired up to know that this is how things work in God's economy? That in God's economy, you don't have to finish with what you started with. That in God's economy, according to Jesus, God is not only able to give you more than you started with, but he is more than willing. Listen again to how excited he was. Listen to what he said. He says again in verse 21, he says, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been so faithful with a few things, and everybody thought it was a lot. But in my economy, I'm so wealthy, I'm so rich, I own everything, man. That was nothing that I gave you. But because you've stewarded it well, look what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to put you in charge, he says, of what? Of many things. Can I ask you a question that only you can answer? Are you the kind of person that God wants to give more things because you've been faithful with a few things? Are you? No one else can answer that but you. Are you that kind of person? Let me put it a different way. Can God trust you with more because you have proved to be faithful with the few things that he's already given you? See, I think if we're honest, a lot of us are like, man, when I get more, then I'm gonna. All right? Man, when I get, just watch out, man. Right? When the moment God gives me that and puts me there or put whatever, then I'm gonna really, and Jesus is like, time out. Part of what Jesus is saying here, believe it or not, is that he's reminding his listeners, his disciples, and us today that God is not really in the business of giving more to people who haven't shown that they can be faithful with a few things. My brothers and sisters in Christ, if you can't say amen, say ouch, because that's the truth. The truth is, it doesn't really make sense when we pray and we ask God to give us more if we haven't been faithful with a few things. And God's like, that's just not how I work. I don't give more to people just because they pray about it, because they dream about it, because they, no. I give more to people who have shown that they can be faithful with a few things. I shared this last week, and you guys were laughing, but my first ministry job, I made like $6,000 a year. I was mowing lawns, and I was working full-time, $6,000 a year. Now, thankfully, things have changed now. I make like $7,000 a year now, so I'm good, you know. Are you laughing? I'm not kidding. Okay, I'm just kidding. That's not true. The church takes good care of me, okay? You see all these babies I have, someone's got to save up for all those weddings. Anyways, but I remember, this is going to sound crazy to you. I remember this was like my wife was working at UT and I was making like $6,000. I was mowing lawns and just trying to, we're just trying to put the pieces together financially. And maybe some of you guys are in that place and it's like, how are we going to do this? And it felt like month to month and paycheck to paycheck. And I'm like, what's going to happen? And I literally remember having a conversation with my wife and her and I sat down. And I remember us saying, hey, we want to be the most generous people that we know. All right? I mean, we're looking at the numbers going, hey, ain't good. And she's probably looking at me like, you may want to up that $6,000 a year. But really, we were like, hey, we want to be the most generous people that we know. And we said this, okay? And this is not a giving talk, by the way, so you can relax. Some of you are like, oh, man, I brought my friend today. No, it has nothing to do with giving. I'm just telling you a story, okay? I remember we said, we're like, hey, we're not going to wait. Like we're going to take what we have now, and we're going to choose to be as generous as possible. And the reason we're going to do that is because I knew that if I couldn't be faithful with $6,000 a year, why in the world would God give me more? Right? If I couldn't be generous with what I have now, why would God give me more? Would you? Right? If I borrowed $6 from you, bro, and I'm like, hey, can I get $6? I'll give it back to you, man, I promise. And you're like, here you go. And then I start avoiding you. Every time you walk in the room, I walk out the room, And I start telling people, like, he ain't seen that $6, man. What a sucker, He fell for it. Right? Like, can I come back to you and be like, man, I need $6,000, bro. You're like, nah. It's like, I don't care if you're the pastor. It ain't happening. Why would God entrust more to us if we haven't been faithful with what he's given us? Again, this is not a give and talk, but I just think it's so interesting how a lot of us are like, man, when I get that number and when I start making this much, I'm going to be real generous. And I just wonder what it must be like for God to see us waiting for him to give us more so that we can be faithful, when this whole time he's been waiting for us to be faithful so that he can give us more. Right? Question to all my, I don't know if we have any in the room, but all my, social media influencers wannabe. I love the vision and the hustle. But why would God give you more followers if you haven't been faithful with the 20 that he's already given you? Why would God give you a bigger platform if you haven't stewarded what he's already given you? Right? Why would God give you your own business if you're not faithful with someone else's business? Right? Why would God give you more employees if you're treating the ones that you have the way you're treating them and you're not stewarding them well? Right? High school students, middle school, I know I'm going to sound like the old guy in here, but a lot of y'all have crazy dreams, and that's awesome. But you can't even go to class and do your homework right now, and you're saying, man, someday God's going to give me a lot, and God's saying, I'm waiting for you to be faithful with where I've already put you. Why would God give you a mic if you can't even hold the door? Jesus is reminding his followers in this narrative that in God's economy, God gives more to people who have shown that they can be faithful with a few things. God is in the business of rewarding people who are willing to do what the guy with 2 bags of gold did. And this is, nobody's asking me, but this is just my opinion, and you can argue with me later if you want. But in my opinion, the guy who got 2 bags is like the MVP of the story. Right? Like I think he's the true hero. Because the guy who got 5, you're like, okay, great, you got 5. That's awesome. I mean, props to him for not looking down on everybody else, and props to him for doing the work. But my favorite guy in this story is the guy who got 2. I love the guy who got 2 because he didn't do what a lot of us do. He didn't go, man, I'm just going to go pray and wait till God gives me as much as he gave that guy. I'm going to wait till I have 5 because when I have 5, watch what I can do. No, he took 2. He's like, I got 2. I'm going to put my 2 to work and I'm going to double my work. And guess what happened when he came back with the 2 that God gave him, and he had invested it well and stewarded it well, and he doubled it. And you're not going to believe how the master responded in verse 22. Listen to this. Verse 22 says, the man with 2 bags of gold, 2 talents. That's all he had. He didn't have 5. He came back and he says, hey, master, you entrusted me, there's that word again, with 2 bags of gold. See, he says, I have gained, how many more? 2 more. And his master replied, oh, that's so adorable. Somebody give the man a cookie. A for effort. You got 2 more. Now you have 4. Still 1 less than the other guy started with. Everybody give him a little golf clap. He tried. It's not what the master said, right? And this is important because I think sometimes a lot of us think that God judges our faithfulness and our stewardship based on what other people did. And according to Jesus in this narrative, God is not judging our success and our faithfulness and our stewardship based on other people's faithfulness and stewardship. God's not going, well, he got 10 and you still only have 4. Listen to what the master said when the guy with 2 came back. He said this to him, same thing. And this is so important because some of you have been faithful and you've been diminishing the work that God is doing through you because, I don't know, it doesn't seem as big as that other person. But I love that the response is exactly the same for the guy who got 2 and he doubled this too. Listen to what the master says. He says, well done. You 2 have been a good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. And so here's what I'm going to do. He says, I'm going to put you in charge of many things. Come share in your master's happiness. Can I just I'm gonna keep it 100 with you guys for just a second. I'm obsessed with this. Like this may be one of my favorite things that I've learned recently about God. That the God of the Bible, twice now, Jesus has told us that when we are faithful and when we steward the few things that God gave us that we can't control, that we started with, that he will give us more. And this may not sound very spiritual to you, okay? And I'm not really sorry for saying it, but I want all of it. I'm just being honest. And this may be, and I've been talking to our staff a little about this, but I feel like this is maybe the first time in my whole life, all right, I'm 42, that I am comfortable saying that I am not content. Like I'm not. And God has done amazing things in my life. And God has done things that are more than I could ever imagine. And if you would have come up to me 20 years ago and told me to write a story of my life, there's no way in the world I could have dreamed that God would have done in and through me what God has done in the last 20-something years. God has blown all of my dreams out of the water. But I'm standing up here to tell you that in spite of all of that, I'm not content. And the reason I'm not content is not because I'm looking for my identity or because I'm trying to achieve something. I'm not content because if God has more for me, and if it is true that the more I steward what God has given me, the more he's going to give me, then I want everything that God wants to give me. Anybody with me on that? And I'm not trying to be dramatic. And I said this a couple weeks ago. I think it will be so sad. So sad. And I don't know if there's sadness or regret in heaven, but I don't want to get to heaven and God go, man, you did pretty good, but look at everything that I had for you. I don't want to miss out on anything. I want to die empty. I want to suck the marrow out of everything that God could possibly have for me. And so if the way to get more from God is to steward what God's given me, well, I'm going to do my best to be faithful. I am obsessed with stewardship because I want more. I want to steward my money in a way that God's like, I want to give him more so he can be more generous because he's already shown that I can trust him. I want to steward this platform in a way that God trusts me to give me more. Right? I want to steward my body. Right? And I'll be honest, I haven't always been really good at that. For like 40 years, I told myself, I just don't like working out. I'm just a picky guy. No, I was just lazy. And 2 years ago, I'm like, man, it doesn't make sense, really, for me to be praying that God will just give me so many more years, as many years as he can with my kids. And I'm not stewarding the body that he gave me. I want to steward my kids. And you may think this is silly. My wife and I, we have family meetings like almost every week. And we'll talk about this someday. We email back and forth and we'll sit down. Like we're not just like with our kids. Like we'll talk about it. Like one of my favorite questions that we ask ourselves when we have our family meeting almost weekly is we're like, what is God doing in the lives of our kids? And how can we partner with it? I love asking that question because it forces me, one, to see my kids in a way that I don't normally see them. And two, it reminds me that even my kids are stewardship. Right? You parents know that, right? I mean, they're your kids, but not really your kids. They're really God's kids. And God's like, I'm going to give them to you to steward for a season. And so I'm like, I want to steward everything God has given me. My money, my health, my house, my kids, my job, my platform, my talents, my gifts, whatever it is that God has put in my hands, I want to steward it to the best of my ability, because according to Jesus, if I do that, God will give me more. And I don't want to get to the end of my life and missed out. And I want to be like, man, what could God have done? I don't want to miss out on God's plans for my life, because I wasn't willing to put in the work. And that was the difference, by the way. Maybe a little plot twist you didn't see coming. The difference between the first two guys and the third guy in this parable is not that the first two guys necessarily were more spiritual or that they had more or whatever. No, the difference is they were willing to actually put in the work that stewardship required. Can we go back real quick? I don't know if you caught it, to verse 15, Melissa, if you can do that for just a second. I think it's verse 16, actually. Listen to what he says again about that man. It says, the man who had received 5 bags of gold, what did he do? He went at once and he put his money to what? Work. Somebody say, it takes work. It takes work. Okay, somebody other than Sarah and 2 other people say, it takes work. What takes work? Stewardship takes work. Okay, and hopefully this is a no-brainer. I don't have to say this. But just in case you missed the memo, okay, and this is me just speaking to those of us who have been around church a while. The cross and the gospel and the grace of Jesus doesn't mean we no longer have to work hard. You guys know that, right? Just because we're saved don't mean now we just get to like put our hands in our pocket and just kind of chill till Jesus comes back. Right? And it sounds silly to say it that way, but I think it's so easy sometimes if you've been around this church thing for a long time, we're just like, well, man, God's grace on the cross, and he's delighted in me, and he loves me no matter what I do, which he does, by the way. He loves you no matter what you do. But it's so easy to take that and then end in a place where we're just like, I'm just going to I'm just going to sail through and, just make sure, as long as I'm living a good life or whatever kind of a thing. And God's going, time out. My cross and my grace don't mean that you don't get to work hard. It doesn't mean that you're no longer accountable to be a steward of what God has given you. Yeah, you're saved. Yeah, he loves you. Yes, his favor is on you. Yes, there's nothing you can do to change his affection for you. But at the same time, God's saying you are accountable for what I have given you. I think it was Dallas Willard who said this, the theologian. He said this. This is such a great quote. He said, grace is not opposed to effort. It is opposed to earning. Man, that is a massive distinction. Grace is not opposed to effort. It's opposed to earning. For those of you, maybe you're new and you're still exploring church stuff, like grace, I know it's a big church, but grace it just means unmerited favor. Grace is God just saying, I'm going to favor you. Grace is God saying, I like you. There's nothing you can do about it to change that. Grace is God saying, I love you more than you could ever. Grace is God saying, I'm not going to treat you like you deserve. I'm going to treat you like Jesus deserves. Grace is what Jesus got us at the cross. Okay, and I'm not going to ask for show of hands, but if you're one of those people that, you're like, again, you're still exploring and you're still trying to figure out this whole faith thing, first of all, glad you're here. Second of all, great job blending in, okay? Seriously. Like every week, I'm not even exaggerating. I'll meet people in the lobby and people will email me and be like, man, I brought my friends in the room and they're not really even Christians and they're in here. I'm like, I'm looking around the room. I don't even recognize them. They do a great job. Right? They're like super secret shoppers, Like some of you just come in and blend in. You grab the coffee so you don't have to raise your hand during worship. And while we're singing, you're like, watermelon, watermelon. Looks like you're worshiping, but you're just kind of mouthing watermelon where you're standing, Glad you're here. Seriously, you're like my favorite person to speak to in the room. Anytime someone tells me that, I'm like, please, I want to meet your friends because these are my favorite people. But having said that, I hope you know that this grace that we're talking about is for you. God's favor is for you. God's like, you may not even believe in me, but I think you're awesome. I think you're the bomb.com. I love you. I have an amazing plan for your life. And I hope that you can breathe that in. I know you're still exploring, but someday I hope you can say yes to the grace of God. Now, having said all of that, can I just say something to those of us who are like, I got it, Sammy. I accepted Jesus in 97, and just as I am, Billy Graham, or whatever it is. You've been around, you know the sermon, you know the parables, you know all of that. I just want to remind us that grace does not give us a pass from hard work. Right? Grace is not an excuse for us now, all of a sudden, to be lazy. Right? Grace is not an excuse for us to do what the guy with one did, which he buried his talent. I don't remember who said it, but I heard a preacher say once that the difference is that we no longer have to work for grace, but now we work from grace. Right? And that's the difference, by the way, that should be the difference, rather, between followers of Jesus Christ and everybody else. Right? The difference between those of us who follow Jesus and everybody else is not that we're better or that we're necessarily more moral or whatever. No, that's not the difference. No, the difference, what ought to be the difference between followers of Jesus Christ and everybody else is that we no longer have to worry about trying to earn God's favor because we already have it. That's the only difference. I don't got to worry about trying to get God to like me because I know God's in love with me. And because I know God's in love with me, I am now free to work hard. And I am working hard, not because I'm trying to please some cosmic being or so he can favor towards me. No, I'm working hard because his favor is already on me. Right? I'm working hard because he's already for me. I'm working hard because of grace. I'm not working for grace. No, I am working from grace. And you may think I'm crazy for saying this, but I'm one of those people who's crazy enough to believe that followers of Jesus Christ, don't miss this, ought to be the hardest working, best stewards of their resources in any room they walk into. Is that crazy to anybody else? Like, if this is true, I mean, just think about it. If this whole idea of what we're talking about is true, if grace is true and the cross is true and we've been redeemed and we have the righteousness of Jesus and all of heaven is now on our side and God's saying there's nothing that you can do to change how I feel about you. If all of that is true, I don't think that means now we just get to sit and put our hands in our pocket and just recline till Jesus comes back. No, I think that ought to compel us and that ought to motivate us to be easily the hardest working, best stewards of anybody in any room we walk into. I think people ought to look around and go, man, there's nobody that stewards whatever they have better than that person because they're a follower of Jesus Christ. I think followers of Jesus Christ, we should be known for our excellence. We should be known for being excellent in stewardship. And I know that's kind of a buzzword, and you're like, what does that even mean? I love this definition by Louis Giglio. Check this out. Listen to what he says. All right, he says this. This is amazing. Here's how he defines excellence. He says, excellence is more than a sense of accomplishment, drive, or determination. Okay, in other words, what we're talking about this morning is not perfectionism. Okay, it's not, I'm an Enneagram 3, let's take over the world. I'm a 3. Let's take over the world. That sounds fun to me. And I'm super competitive. I love it. But that's not what this is. That's not stewardship. Right? It is a deep confidence in the sovereign plans of God. And I would add in the love of God, coupled with a desire to use the gifts that he has entrusted to us to the height of our ability as a reflection of him. I'm going to read that again. I know it was a lot, but that is so good, y'all. It is a deep confidence in the sovereign plans of God. And now that confidence in the love of God has given me a desire to use the gifts that God has given me to the height of my ability as a reflection of him. For those of you who were here last week, leave that up for just a little bit, Melissa. And I told you that I was going to tell you how to get more. Well, there's your answer. If you want more than you started with, that begins when we say yes to stewarding what God has given us with excellence. We get more when we decide that we're going to use the gifts that he's given us to the height of our ability because it reflects him. We get more when we become the kind of stewards that are determined that good enough is not good enough. Right? And this doesn't sound very spiritual, but I'm telling you that pursuing excellence in stewardship may be one of the most spiritual things that you ever do. right? We get more when we decide that because of God's grace and favor over us, we're going to walk in the path of some of our favorite ancient heroes of faith. That we're going to do what some of the people that we name our kids after do. Like Joseph. Can I give you guys just a quick Old Testament, like just a quick rundown? I promise you, when you start looking for this in the Bible, it'll blow your mind how often it comes up. Anybody remember the story of Joseph? Anybody remember? For those of you who don't know the story of Joseph, Joe, you didn't raise your hand. You're named after him. I'm guessing you do. Okay, all right. Just want to make sure. He's like, I don't know. I never heard of him, you know? Right? Joseph, when he was at a young age, okay, this is amazing. At a young age, the Bible tells us that he had a dream. God gave him a dream. God told him he was going to do amazing things through him. His father loved him, bought him an amazing Technicolor dream coat from H&M. It was awesome. Joseph was like, check me out, man. I'm the man. And then what happens? His brothers throw him in the pit, and they sell him off as a slave. Now, Joseph is working in Potiphar's house as a slave. And this is not on the screen. And I didn't know if I was going to read this, but I got to just read it to you real quick, okay? Because this is amazing. This is in Genesis chapter 39. Joseph is a slave. Listen to what the writer says. This is amazing. It says, where is it? Okay, here. He says, when his master, when he was a slave, saw that the Lord was with him, which I'm like, he's a slave. The Lord's with him? His brothers sold him out, right? That doesn't sound like someone the Lord's with. But listen to what he says. He says, the Lord gave him success in everything he did. Joseph found favor in his master's eyes and became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything that he owned. Verse 6, Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care, with Joseph in charge. He did not concern himself with anything except the food that he ate. That's amazing. Potiphar, this secular, guy that didn't care about God, is like, all I care about is what I want to eat Wendy's or Burger King for dinner. You're in charge of everything. My money, my business, my assets, all of it he entrusted to Joseph. Because Joseph was really, really good at stewardship. And the writer says that's because God was with him. Do you guys think it was hard work for Joseph to steward everything that Potiphar owned? Yeah, it was. Everything. Dude's like, I'm going to put you in charge of it. What happens next? Right? You remember? Joseph got falsely accused for assault. And the master is like, I don't want to do this, but throws him in jail. Joseph goes into jail. Listen to what happens. Joseph is in prison now. Okay, talk about 2 steps forward and 5 steps back. His brothers sold him to slavery. He's like, dang it. His master put him in charge. He's like, okay, things are looking better. And they're like, you're going to prison. He's like, oh, man. He's back in prison. Listen to what the writer says in prison towards the end of chapter 39, I think. He says, while Joseph was in prison, again, the Lord was with him. And I'm like, okay, I don't know if I want the Lord to be with me, if that's what it means, right? He says, God was with him. He showed him kindness, gave him favor in the eyes of the prison warden, which we all have. And the prison warden put Joseph in charge of all of those who were held in prison. And he was made responsible for everything that was done there. The warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success and whatever. Even in prison, this dude was the man because he was a great steward. And you know the story. If you don't know, go read it later. But Joseph went from prison to being like the second in command of the entire nation, because he was a great steward. Same thing with Moses, right? Moses, anybody remember the story? God told him, Moses, whatever, killed someone, had to leave Egypt. Moses worked for his father-in-law for 40 years, tending sheep. And then God said, now I'm preparing you for something. You guys can pray for that mom out there because you're like, oh, man. David, what was David doing before Goliath? Remember? Tending sheep. And he was one of the best there was. How do I know? Because David says, one time I was tending sheep and a lion came and took the sheep. And I would have been like, okay, peace out, tax write-off. Sorry, master. I was watching your sheep. A lion came. Nothing I could do about it. I think he would understand. David's like, no, man. I chased that lion down. I caught it. beat it down, save the sheep. And one time a bear came, and I would have been like, peace. It's just one sheep. I got the rest. David's like, no, man. I'm responsible for this. Chased him down, killed it, saved the sheep. God was building David through those little things. David kills Goliath, and the writer says now David had to go, and Saul, the king, if you know the story, hated David, but David had to go be his servant, and he had to go play, right? David's like, I've been anointed to be king, and now I got to play the little lair or whatever it is to make you happy. And the writer says that even though Saul hated David, David was the best at what he did because he was a great steward. You guys want me to keep going, or do you get the point? When we, it's all over the Bible. When we steward what God has given us, God's saying, I'm gonna give you more. All right? I'm gonna give you more. So again, the question is not, has God given you anything? The question is, are you the kind of person that God wants to give more because you've stewarded what he has given you with faithfulness? Some of you heard me share this story before, but as I was thinking of this sermon, I just kept thinking back to the days when, I had just moved here and I felt the call to ministry, and I knew that God had given me this gift to talk to people, and all I wanted to do is just tell the story of Jesus, but I couldn't, and it was so frustrating. Maybe some of you are there, you got this gift, and you're like, this is so frustrating. I just remember I would go to conferences, and I would sit in the crowd, and this is so embarrassing to admit out loud, but this is true. I would sit in a conference and listen to speakers, and I'd be like, man, I could do so much better than that guy. Seriously. I'm like, I could wake up out of my sleep and do better than that guy is doing. No offense, but I'm so much better than him. I would be sitting there like, come on, God, what gives? And I just remember as a moment in my life, God's like, why would I give you a platform if you're not faithful with what I already gave you? And I'm like, what'd you give me? Okay, right now I'm mowing grass for a living, and I got 9 college students in my basement. It's not a lot for an Enneagram 3 who was a high achiever. And God says, can you be faithful in those 2 things? And I promise I'm not exaggerating, but I made a decision. I'm like, all right, this is how God's economy works, but I'm going to do the best I can. Okay, and if you think I'm making this up, some of you know him, but the guy I worked for, he still lives in Toledo. I literally wrote him a letter years later, and I told him, I said, I just need you to know that it was by mowing grass I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if I didn't mow grass with you. I just want you to know that it was in the midst of just pushing that mower all through Toledo that God taught me about stewardship and excellence. And I just remember, this is a true story, I remember just mowing this guy's lawn, and I would go back through and look in his driveway, and if there was a single blade of grass, I'm looking, I'm picking it with my hands, and I just wanted it to be perfect because I felt like God said to me, Sammy, if you can't be faithful with someone else's business, why would I give you my own business? I'm like, I'm just mowing lawns, but I want to do the best that I can. And so I would go and just do the best that I could. And maybe it wasn't the best in the world, and maybe other people did better, but I knew that I had to do the best that I could. And then I would come back home, and once a week I would have 9 students in my basement. Jared, I'm so glad that you're here today, and I'm not going to look at you because I'm going to get emotional. But this dude was there in my basement. There was 9 students in my basement. And I just felt like God said to me, can you steward that? And a lot of people don't know this, but I started taking off my shoes, not when I was speaking at churches or at arenas or on tours. No, I started taking off my shoes when I was speaking to 9 students like Jared in my basement. And I just remember telling myself that what I'm about to do is sacred. It's only 9 students, but who cares? This is what God has given me, and I want to be faithful, and I want to be a great steward. So I'm going to take my shoes off as a reminder in my own basement that what I'm about to do is a massive deal. And I didn't know where it was going to go. I just knew that if I didn't steward these students and I didn't steward this business that I was helping be a part of, then God had no business giving me more. And so I did the best I could. And what do you know? God did what only God could do. And I just want to encourage you guys today. I'm almost done, I promise. I don't know where you are. I don't know where God has put you. I don't know how close or far away you feel from your dream. I don't know how small or big what's in your hand is. But I'm promising you that if you say yes to stewardship with excellence, I don't know for how long that God says, I'm going to give you more. I'm going to give you more wherever you are. I love this quote by MLK Jr. It is so good. Maybe you've heard this before. It's amazing. Listen to what he says. I don't have it in my notes. You're going to have to throw it up there, Melissa. He says, if a man is called to be a street sweeper, or a mower in my case, he should sweep streets even as Michelangelo painted, or as Beethoven composed music, or as Shakespeare wrote poetry. Is that the end of it? No. He should sweep the streets so well, this is amazing, that all the hosts of heaven and earth will pause to say, here lived a great street sweeper who did this job well. Isn't that so good? I love the way the Apostle Paul put this. He says, whatever you do, do it for the glory of God. You guys know what whatever means in Greek? Whatever. Like whatever. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know where you are. I don't know your job or your kids or what you've been entrusted with. Maybe you're just in class or a student or trying to figure out. Well, Paul's like, whatever it is that you do, he's like, I want you to do it for the glory of God. Can you imagine if we actually pulled this off? Can you imagine if we're the kind of community that says yes to stewardship with excellence? Imagine what God would do if we're the kind of people where God's like, I can't wait to give you more. Can you imagine what it would be like at the end if we walk up and God is like, man, my grace was free, but you put in the work. Well done, good and faithful servant. Jesus is letting us into the way God works in his story. And he's saying, I have an amazing part for you that's more than you could ever imagine. But you got to be faithful. SC fam, I wish I could end the story right there. That's a great place to end it. Let's go. Let's all go be a great steward. But I can't end right here because that's not where the parable ends. I wish I could end it with this super happy ending, like, yay, he gives us more. But that's not really the end of the story. And I just want to read you the end of the story, and then we'll get out of here. Okay, it doesn't end with a lot of happiness. Listen to what he says in verse 24. I just want to be faithful to the text and just let you know how it ends. It says, so the man who had received one came back and says, Master, I knew that you were a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown, gathering where you have not scattered seed. Isn't it interesting that what was supposed to be a gift now felt like a burden because he didn't know the heart of his master? It's like the other day when Eden came down and she wanted to ask me for a treat. And she's like, can I have it? And I was like, hey, we're all cleaning. I'm like, yeah, you can have that, but just help us finish cleaning and then you can have. And she just freaked out. She's like, oh, I knew you weren't going to give it to me. And blah, blah. She's going on. I'm like, whoa, calm down. I'm like, calm down. I don't really care that you have a treat. I'm just saying, can you like help us do some work before? And that's a little bit of what the servant's doing, right? He's just projecting. He missed the heart. He thought his master wanted something from him. He didn't realize his master actually wanted something for him. And so he's just like, yeah, harvesting. And it says this in verse 25. So I was afraid and I went out and I hid your gold, my talent, in the ground. So he says, here is what belongs to you. I'm giving you back to you. And verse 26, and full disclosure, I've studied this. I've researched this. I don't fully know what all this means. It's kind of scary, but I'm just going to throw it out there for you because this is an ending that most of us don't really expect Jesus to have in his story. But he did. It says, here's what Jesus says. Oh, here's what the master says. You wicked and lazy servant. So you knew that I have harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. I think there's a hint of sarcasm there. Like, if you really believe that, well, then he says, you should have put my money on deposit with the banker so that when I return, I'll receive it with interest. And then verse 28, it says, so here's what we're going to do. This is a crazy ending to the story. I don't care how many times you've heard it. It says, take the bag of gold from him, the master says, give it to the one who has 10 bags. Am I the only one who expected the story to end with the master saying, actually, you have 10. Why don't you take 4 and give it to him, right? And why don't you give 1 to the guy who has 4 so that everybody has 5? That's a nice, fair ending to the story. That's not what happens. He says, no, take it. Give it to the guy with 10. And then he says this in verse 29, for whoever has will be given more, so they even have an abundance. And whoever does not have AKA the people who don't steward what God has given them already, even what they have, Jesus says will actually be taken from them. There's so much in this narrative that I'm not sure that I fully understand, but here's what I know, and then we're done. Here's what I know about everybody in here is that you've been given a lot. Even if you're not a father, you've been given a lot. The other thing I know is that you're either going to end up with more or less than you've been given. And according to Jesus, a lot of that has to do with how well we steward what's already in our hands. The choice is ours. His grace is free. His love is free. But the choice of stewardship is ours. So what's it going to be? What are we going to do with what we've been given?